Debate. I welcome the speech of the Minister and indeed the speeches and the reiteration of some of the charges that are being investigated. And what is important that each and every one of those will be fully and properly independently investigated, as I understand it, by the Garda Síochána, and that's the way it should and must be. I just also want to say that to pay tribute to Justice Fergus O'Dowd, who passed away recently, and he was in fact the chair of the tribunal into planning corruption in Dublin City and County some years ago. And the toxic mix of ministers, developers and politicians was fatal for many of them because of the corruption that was exposed at that time. And regardless of where you sit in this House, I will always support transparency, accountability, as indeed the vast majority of this House does. And I just want to make the point that there were some very important people who were involved in exposing those issues at that time. Frank MacDonald from the Irish Times, Charlie Bird from RTE, and the famous or infamous Vincent Brown. They put the spotlight on these issues, and that is appropriate and that's proper in the appropriate place. And I think whatever question there is, it's the ordinary person we have to make sure has confidence in the planning process. And it was shaken in the 80s and the 90s, and it is shaken now, and there's absolutely no doubt about it. So an appropriate and judicious examination of all the issues is terribly important. And never do we want to hear in any tribunal of inquiry, not that there will be one in the future, what James Gogarty said to the guy that was with him in the taxi as he went to the Minister's house with 2 brown envelopes, 40,000 euros, and each of them are pounds. He said, "Will we get a receipt for this? 80,000? Will we hell?" Or words to that effect. That day has to be gone, and it was shocking and appalling. And I just want to say that for my own part, like I have stood in the High Court to vindicate the planning rights of my community. When developers knocked down a listed building in the middle of the night, it was myself and my former late colleague, Eddie O'Doherty, took a High Court action because the council wouldn't act to vindicate a listed building with a High Court injunction on it that it could not be demolished without planning permission, disappeared overnight on a holiday weekend. And the court cases that were fought there, we fought the civil case and we were witnessing the criminal case where those who knocked it down were prosecuted and the company in fact pleaded guilty. So the problem is that we don't want history to be repeated. And those fights and those battles that we fought then, you know, I thought that all would be ended now, but such may not necessarily be the case. So I just welcome what the Minister is doing. I welcome the commitment to change. I welcome, I think, a strict time limit on membership of the board. I think, in fact, we probably need a judicial involvement in some respects in the operation of the board. That I believe there could be a case for a judge or a retired judge to review and overlook or oversee some of the goings-on there to make sure that all of these issues should never possibly arise again, and we should look for best practice in other jurisdictions in relation to that. Just a couple of points I just want to make. In present day, for instance, there is in County Meath, there is a proposal by Dawn Meats to have a facility in Bow Park which will impact significantly and I believe adversely on the environment of the River Boyne. Hundreds of people have objected, but the facts are that Bord Pleanála has refused to grant those who objected to it, to Bord Pleanála, an oral hearing, which I think is wrong. We need to look at that. And the more time goes on, the more things are the same. It's also true that in Drogheda today, there's a small estate called Bewley View. It had an open space in it for many years, and the person who built the houses has decided to actually apply for planning permission to put a house on the green open space. It went to Bord Pleanála. Bord Pleanála decision was, as it was identified as a green space in the original application, it could not be built on. But guess what? I just had to write an objection this week to Louth County Council again because the builder has applied again to build on a green site. It's a joke. These things shouldn't be happening, and we need greater clarity in these matters. So I think that regardless of what happens, The investigations and the analysis that has now been made into Board Pleanála will restore, I believe, and must restore our confidence in the planning process. And I feel that the professionalism, as has been remarked by many people, of the vast majority of people involved in the process, hopefully will be vindicated. And if it's not, if people have broken the law or the regulations, well then they should and they must face the full rigours of the law, and I fully support any actions which the Gardaí may or may not take into the future after due process. But I think this is an important debate, and I welcome the actions of the Minister, and I personally can't fault him on any of the points that he made in his address to us.